But in this case, since he addressed them to, it was addressed to the rnc.org, not rnc.com. rnc.org, by the way, is a site owned by a friend of mine, who then shifted the documents over to me. Naval Air Station, Naval Air Station, Naval Air Station, Naval Air Station, Naval Air Station. These letters are sent to soldiers, active duty soldiers, but what came back? They're not at their base, so they're obviously fraudulent voters. This is done under contract with the Republican National Committee. I talked to the voter. He said, I got the vote. The guy on the list said, I got the vote. I said, my vote from overseas. I said, was it counted? He said, well, no. It was, see, it's challenged. You don't think it's a perfect crime. You mail in your vote from Afghanistan as an active duty soldier, and it's challenged. You don't even know it. Don't, by the way, mail in your ballot. Don't go postal if you can at all avoid it. 1/3 of Californians will mail in their ballots. Why? You know who you're giving your ballot to? Okay? Now, since these are BLA voters, Jewish voters, BLA voters, Latino voters, Robert Kennedy, my co-investigator, is a professor of law, and he says, this is a crime. This is go-to-jail crime. He's very emotional about it, because his father wrote the law that made it a crime, the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This is a crime. He said, Roe should be in jail. He's not in jail. He said, Griffin, his assistant, should be in jail. He's in Congress. Griffin's assistant should be in jail then, too. He's not in jail. He's in, well, actually, he's the campaign manager for a guy named Mitt Romney. Feel better? That's a system. But why? Who busted it? Why isn't it? Why? I've been asked constantly, why aren't these guys in jail if they committed crimes? You know, like especially the right-wing talk shows. Yeah, well, you know. Well, there was a prosecutor with some real cojones. Captain David Iglesias, U.S. federal prosecutor. He's a Republican, a staunch Republican, a born-again Christian Republican. And he was told, here's fraudulent voters. He said, then he said, go arrest them. He said, okay. So he took the lists and he ran all over. He said, he had 50 names that Karl Rove and the Republican committee gave him, because he was going to prove that there were these fraudulent voters, right? The fraudulent voters. This is taking the place of the sleeper cell. It's taking the place of the Red Menace, right? The Yellow Peril. It's now the fraudulent voter. Someone swinging the Rio Grande to vote your school board elections, right? The aliens. Right? So he's looking for the fraudulent voter. And by the way, I asked Dr. Tova Wang, who's an expert in this, said, how many fraudulent voters? She said, more likely that you'd be struck by lightning than vote fraudulently, steal someone's ID and take their vote. I checked it, 60 times more likely you'd be struck by lightning than vote fraudulently. Seriously. And so he's looking for the lightning strike, for the fraudulent voter, and he finds them. So the Rove gang says to him, from Washington, from the Justice Department, well, arrest someone. I said, what? Arrest someone. He said, but we don't have any evidence. They said, arrest someone. He said, arrest an innocent citizen? Because they have a Hispanic name. Arrest. He said, well, you can let him go later. He said, it's not the Soviet Union. Well, he made a mistake there. He refused. They fired him. They fired him, federal prosecutor. And the excuse was not that he refused to do an election fix and arrest Americans for trying to vote. It was absenteeism. See, Captain Iglesias was also one of the top JAGs in the U.S. Navy. You would know him because if you look in Billionaires and Ballot Damage, you'll see a picture of the guy who plays him, Tom Cruise, and A Few Good Men. That's him. That's Captain Iglesias. Okay? That's Captain Iglesias. And so Iglesias was fired for absenteeism. Yeah, he was absent. The commander-in-chief had sent him to Bosnia to prosecute war criminals. So he wasn't in New Mexico, so they said he was absent. And they fired him. By the way, he sued the President of the United States, Mr. Bush, because no employer can fire their employee. He said, my employer is the President, and he ordered me, and he fired me for doing my job as a soldier. So, there are some people, including some Republicans, who will stand up. But see, they didn't understand it. He said, I thought I was working, with the general. In fact, I was a Sith warrior. I don't even know what that means, but I'm sure it is. Because he wasn't following the money. The money. Remember the diamond mine? It hasn't changed. Okay? What do they want? Okay? Iceman Simmons gave Karl Rove $20 million for his data trust machine. He's going to give him $30 million more. He donated to every Republican candidate to attack the others. He paid for the attack ads of Santorum against Romney, the attack ads of Romney against Gingrich, the attack ads of Gingrich against Perry, and then he paid Perry twice as much to attack everyone and blow himself up to attack himself. Iceman Simmons is putting $70 million into this campaign. One guy. One guy. Why? Well, it's no big deal. He's worth $10 billion. Does he care? No, he's not a Republican either. I think they're all nuts. Every one of these billionaires, by the way, except for 35 and 32, are all supporters of gay marriage rights. So what are they doing? It's money. Okay. So what Simmons did is he gave $2 million to Perry, knowing that Perry, if you give the more money, the more Perry spoke. Governor Perry, the governor of Texas, he's the smartest back rocks, and he makes George Bush look like a road stopper, right? And so he blew himself up, and Perry knew that. So why did he back the loser with the most money? The answer was, because the Iceman's always the winner. He plays on a different chessboard than we do. It's multi-dimensional. You don't even see it. He gave the millions, the big bucks, to Perry, because he knew Perry would lose, and therefore go back to the State House. As governor of Texas, he couldn't give him anything because he was dealing with the state of Texas. He needed something from the state of Texas, but as the presidential candidate, he can load him with the gold. He came back to the State House still loaded with the Iceman's money. His first act was to authorize the largest waste dump in America, a big hole in the ground in Texas for all of America's nuclear waste, right on top of the Ablala water aquifer. So, follow money. It's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's not about that, okay? It's not about that. Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan? Paul Ryan? Where'd this guy come from? Right? Biggest donor, Paul the Vulture Singer. Who picked Paul Ryan? Who told Romney, who actually said, when he thought mics were off, I wish I didn't pick Ryan, who made him pick it? His #1 billionaire, Paul the Vulture Singer. Okay. Why? What did Ryan do for Romney? Do you remember? I mean, what did Ryan do for the Vulture? Do you remember that Paul Ryan was the guy who stood up and gave the big speeches against the TARP bank bailout? Who voted for TARP? Only 32 Republicans, including Paul Ryan. It was Paul Ryan who led the congressional debate against the auto bailout. Only a handful of Republicans voted for the auto bailout, led by Paul Ryan. What happened that he grabbed his tiny ankle? Who made the money? Where did the TARP money go? Okay, tell you a little bit. I can't give you all of it because it's in the book and it's also coming out soon. There's more. I'll give you hints. General Motors spun off its auto parts division. And the auto parts division of General Motors, Delphi, went bankrupt. And a guy named Paul the Vulture Singer, another guy named John the Snake Paulson, another guy named billionaire named Dan Loeb, bought the auto parts division, GM's auto parts division, for 67 cents a share. Okay, fine. Then the bailout came along, and a guy from the owner of the Detroit Pistons, who made, he said, Michigan boy made good. He said, okay, I'm going to save GM, I'm going to save the auto parts industry because Delphi said it's closing, and I'll buy it for Detroit. With General Motors and give it back to General Motors with support from the government. So Obama, they all had a big press conference and they announced, okay, you know, Detroit boy is going to buy the auto parts division. And then the Vulture said, no, he's not. He said, you know what the Vulture said? He said, you know, your car's going to look funny without steering wheels. I said, what do you mean? He said, if we don't, we want $22 a share. And he said, that's a 3,000% profit. He says, I want $22 a share. Or no steering columns, no ball bearings. He had the government and GM by the ball bearings. The Treasury Department asked the president of GM, well, how long can you go without their parts? He said, half an hour. They had none. Kept all the inventory there. They got it. They got their 3,000% profit. The Vulture made just short of $1 billion for himself, $900 million. The Snake made $1.5 billion. Okay? They put up virtually nothing. These guys made about $4 billion putting up a couple million. You know, they got billions from the bailout, from TARP, and from GM. And then they dropped the entire pension plan. I just got off the phone with the Naylor family of Kokomo, Indiana. Engineer for 36 years with GM and Delphi. Was forced out at the bankruptcy. The pension was dropped. The government took over most of the pension. You and I are paying most of the pension. But it's reduced by 40%. They can't make it. He's working at a grocery store. Family's gone bankrupt, and their home has just been foreclosed. But the Vulture got $1 billion. Thanks, Mr. Ryan. That's what this election's about. It's not about stealing votes for an election. It's about stealing this nation. It's about bankrupting and foreclosing on the Naylors. And I watch Robert Pratt family. And I know what's going to happen next to the Naylors, and they don't know it yet. I don't even want to tell them. So I was in Detroit when Robert and I met with other auto workers. Like, remember the UAW, Robert Pratt in the 8 Mile neighborhood, foreclosed. The minute he was foreclosed, something else happened. His vote registration was expunged. Because the Republican Party claimed that if you are foreclosed, you're not legitimately living at your registration place, even if you're in the house. Now, I wanted to see if there was a connection between the foreclosures and the purging, right? This isn't Billionaires at Ballot Bandits. I want to see if there's a connection, so I go fly to Detroit, and I find this big operation called Truck and Trot, like hundreds of lawyers. It's like a foreclosure factory moving thousands of foreclosures through the courts, all this paperwork, and they get fees for this, for each family they throw out of their house. Not that they do anything with houses. You should go there to 8 Mile. They just wiped out houses. Within 2 days, all the plumbing's ripped out, the weeds are up to here. The banks don't want these pieces of junk. They just want people out. Okay. Get fees for that. And there's a reason why. I'll tell you that in a minute. But I go into the Trot and Trot offices. They have given $100,000 to the Romney Billionaire Fund.